October 31st, 2011, a man by the name of Eugene Gruber was taken into custody at Lake County Jail in Waukegan, Illinois. Gruber is 51, homeless, and he's been arrested under suspicion of disorderly conduct and criminal trespass to property. He's going to end up spending just under 2 days inside the walls of the Lake County Detention Center, but as the following brief episodes caught on CCTV footage will show, that's still going to be plenty of time to alter the course of Eugene Gruber's life forever. Just a warning that some of the following footage may be difficult to watch. That said, now that you've been warned, let's jump right in. These first clips were captured between 7:49 and 7:56 a.m. on Halloween morning, the morning of Gruber's arrest. Right away, we see Gruber after he's first brought in. He undergoes a few pre-booking activities, such as getting checked for contraband and that sort of thing. The one thing I feel it apt to draw attention to is just the overall shape that Gruber is in at this point. Without any audio, we naturally can't tell what, if anything, is being discussed, but one thing we can all see clearly is the physical shape that Gruber is in. In essence, we don't really see anything wrong with Gruber in a physical sense. More specifically, yes, this will soon be quite relevant to our story. When Gruber enters the jail, he's standing up without any aid, and he's walking on his own 2 feet. As many of you have probably already guessed, this is all very soon about to change. Immediately after that last clip, Gruber is escorted out into this hallway, from which we have a different camera recording a different POV. After the pre-booking portion of the morning has concluded, Gruber is escorted down said corridor that appears to be lined with cells. And it appears that officers show Gruber all the way to the cell that's farthest back and off to the right. I can't help but feel a slight twinge of deja vu watching this part of the footage. In a way, it's reminiscent of the Jacob Servant story I covered a while back, which further goes on to make me think that these similarities should absolutely be starting to concern us. But for now, at any rate, we see that Eugene Gruber isn't that big of a guy, in that his stature is nowhere near intimidating, as is the case for many individuals who struggle to know where they're even going to get their next meal. He appears on the thinner side, or by no means is he exactly built. What's more is he's cuffed, and he's not carrying anything on him. No weapons, no unrestricted usage of his hands. It all equals basically no chance in the event he were to get it into his mind that challenging these guards to a fight is what he would have liked to do. And yet for some reason, we're sitting here watching footage of a totally defenseless 51-year-old man as he gets escorted into a cell by an entire entourage of officers. If I didn't know any different, I would watch this and literally think that this man, Gruber, he must have done something crazy. He must have swung at a cop, or he was even only being a bit difficult during that pat down we just witnessed. But this video doesn't show any of that. He's not being insubordinate by the looks of it. There appears to be no discernible reason for why it takes this many guards to show a 51-year-old homeless man to his cell. But then it gets even weirder, because after being shown into the cell, it's barely a couple minutes that Gruber is shown right back out again. Let's have a look at that. It's not clear what exactly went on in there, obviously. All we know is that it happened fast and barely out of view of any cameras. So the next time we see Gruber reemerge, something's sort of different, and is probably to be expected. Accounts of what takes place out of view of any camera conflict. But what we should be able to agree on, watching this piece of footage, is that definitely some type of altercation must have taken place between Gruber and those guards. According to the timestamp, this footage is captured literally no more than 2 minutes after the last one. That is, no more than 2 minutes after we saw Gruber disappear at 7:53 a.m. along with a brigade of officers into that far back cell. At 7:55 a.m., we see Gruber already being escorted back out, and it's pretty immediately obvious that something is definitely off. Now, instead of walking on his own feet, he's being dragged across the hallway by 3 guards who are in a rather nonchalant manner just carrying him along. By what I believe ends up being Gruber's own account, after entering the cell, the guards end up pepper spraying Gruber in the face. For what reason do they feel the need to pepper spray Mr. Gruber? We don't know. After he's back down the hallway, it's back once again through this room, where we were able to get a closer glimpse of not just Gruber, but of the officers that follow him. Their gestures appear to support a theory of Gruber having just been pepper sprayed, as a couple of them can be seen wiping their noses with the back of their hands. And this points toward secondhand contact with said pepper spray. Before we go on, because it gets much worse than this, there are a couple of things to quickly point out. So in the very first 2 segments, we have the ones we just saw. While we can't hear audio, what we can still manage to see is the body language that's being presented by both sides, although I really just want to focus on Gruber here. To me, Gruber's body language doesn't seem to suggest that he's putting up any kind of resistance. His posture seems relaxed in the sense that he's not resisting, and he definitely isn't seen struggling with any of the officers. There's simply just not any tension present. Then secondly, and I'm just going to say it point blank, what is the deal really with the need for so many escorts just for this one man who's basically handcuffed and defenseless? Really, why the whole entourage? It seems seriously weird, as does the fact that they're not done booking him in yet. Remember, they take him out back, and then just 2 minutes later, they lug him back out to go complete booking procedures in a location that's on the opposite side of the jail, it appears, as these cells are. If it's not clear what I'm getting at, basically why, if they weren't yet finished with the book-in procedure, as evidenced by the fact that they're dragging Gruber out to the book-in area to go complete that right now, what exactly was the point of making that 2-minute pit stop at that cell, instead of just taking him straight to finish getting booked in the first place? In all seriousness, if someone can give me one remotely plausible, innocent explanation for why else 10 officers decide to take Gruber to the opposite end of the jail for just 2 minutes first before finishing up the book-in, other than because they had a premeditated ass-whooping waiting for him just conveniently a foot or two off camera, please kindly explain it to me. I'm open to innocent explanations. I wish there were some kind of innocent explanation. It's just that my mind hasn't been able to really think of one. Finally, if you haven't seen this yet, you'd have no way of knowing this yet. But as the footage goes on, I'll just tell you, but you're never going to actually see Gruber get brought back to the cell again. This, where they take him to pepper spray him, except claim that they're just letting him out of his handcuffs in order to put him into a cell, presumably, isn't even Eugene Gruber's actual jail cell. Or at least after this incident, it's not. After this, unless I'm mistaken, they don't even ever bring him back there again. So of course, if that's not Gruber's assigned cell or whatnot, then what's their explanation for why they were taking him there in the first place? So far, Gruber hasn't even been inside the jail for a few minutes, and already something seems very wrong. For about roughly the next 24 hours or so, we're going to see attempts made at taking Gruber back in and out of his cell and out to the booking area in vain effort over and over again to get him properly booked into the jail, which, why they haven't been able to do so yet, by the way, is a whole other question. At any rate, this is going to prove to be problematic for officers for reasons that will soon become very obvious. This part of the footage takes place at just prior to 11:30 p.m. October 31st, so over 12 hours have now passed since Gruber first entered the jail. The clip depicts Gruber being dragged, again, by a couple of officer escorts, one on each side. We can also see quite clearly that, even in spite of no sound, Gruber very clearly seems to be mouthing the word help. So in essence, he's crying out for help. But why is this? Why won't Gruber just get up and walk? Why be non-compliant now? And what is he screaming out help for? I want to remind you that the time right now is nearly midnight on his first day there. Gruber has been at Lake County Jail since about 8 a.m. that same morning. Well, the problem that Gruber is experiencing now is that Gruber can't walk. This clip shows Eugene Gruber after he has been paralyzed from the waist down. It's said that at some point in the afternoon, I'm not certain of the time because there are a couple conflicting stories as to whether there was one altercation or two, but it said that Gruber, at this point, he has yet again some kind of an altercation with the jail officers, by one account. In a statement given by one of the officers present, Gruber, they say, in being resistant to the officer's commands, accidentally fell to the floor, and he did so in such a forceful manner that he actually managed to bring one of the jail guards down to the floor with him. I don't know what the hell this has anything to do with Gruber becoming paralyzed or anything like that, but that's just what one of the jail officers tries to say happened. By other accounts, and to me, Frank, whether or not one of the guards got pulled down with him, I don't care, but by other accounts, Gruber was in fact thrown violently to the floor by one or more of the guards, and this was done with such force that upon impact with the ground, Gruber's neck was instantly snapped, and within fractions of a second, he was rendered paralyzed from the waist down. Hence, he's now a paraplegic. I'll say it one last time. Whether there was truly any form of insubordination or not, it doesn't matter. What matters is that prior to this altercation, Gruber was okay. He was capable of standing up, of walking across a room, of kicking a ball, of presumably riding a bike, doing normal shit. And now, in less than just fractions of a second, by the time of this clip, all of those freedoms and more have been taken away from the 51-year-old forever. But to these officers, It isn't enough that they break his spinal column and turn him into a paraplegic. Following the violent, incredibly serious and time-sensitive injury to his spinal column, Gruber does not hesitate in informing the guards of his situation. He tells numerous staff that he is unable to feel his legs and that he cannot move them. Instead of being taken with a morsel of remorse or concern, much less the urgency to get Gruber the immediate medical attention that his condition desperately requires, instead, the guard's priority remains to get Mr. Gruber booked into the system. Suffice it to say, the officers don't seek medical help for Mr. Gruber, who is obviously horrifically injured and whose injuries are such that they could prove quite dangerous, if not in fact fatal. Instead, it's said that they continue throughout the day and night to keep dragging Gruber back and forth, it's said from his cell to the booking area, back and forth. Whether it's because they don't believe Gruber when he says he can't walk, or else whether it's because they simply don't care. Either way, the officers clearly are denying Gruber medical care at this point, and the way that they just keep dragging him along as if he's an oversized sack of potatoes and not an actual human being, it's shocking, to say the least, and it looks practically barbaric. I also cringe to think of what this must be doing to exacerbate Gruber's injury on the inside. The way they're yanking him left and right and in all sorts of directions, given Gruber's already extensive injuries, tugging and tossing him around in this ragdoll type manner is probably definitely only serving to aggravate his condition. The following clip shows Gruber at around 7:30 the following morning, November 1st. It's coming close to 24 hours since his arrest, and now we can actually see Gruber is slumped over in a wheelchair. Finally, they got him one, but he isn't looking too good. In the meantime, officers continue their superfluous, in vain attempts at booking their now permanently disabled detainee. At no time does anyone pick up a phone to call an ambulance, and at no time do we even at least see any of the jail's medical staff coming over to check on him. Since my tendency is always to give people the benefit of the doubt, for a moment I was thinking that maybe they at least did come take his vitals at least. But as it's written in a court complaint later filed by Gruber's family, it is actually about 15 hours from the time that Gruber becomes paralyzed to the point that any kind of help is finally sought for Mr. Gruber. 15 fucking hours. I'm sorry, but I wouldn't wait so long to get help for a suffering squirrel. I'll say it again. There was no confusion about Mr. Gruber's condition or what he reported that he was subjectively experiencing. He told these officers numerous times, it is to my understanding, that he could not walk. He could not feel his legs. And they don't do anything. Nobody does anything. This is because they don't care. You want to know how I can be so certain of the fact that they don't care? Simple. It's because if they cared, then they would have done something. Period. These people don't belong in our jail systems. They don't belong anywhere where they're allotted even the tiniest bit of authority over anybody else, much less given the authority over decisions that could potentially mean the difference between life and death for an individual. Cases like Gruber's are particularly heartbreaking because when you watch these CCTV clips, there's very little to no ambiguity about the situation. It's not just the sniffles. It's not just a bug bite. It's a serious health concern. And yet, like NPCs just executing orders on autopilot, these people just resume this routine of doing all they can do to not get the patient help. Shortly after 8 a.m. on November 1st, after wheeling him back to his cell once again, that's when officers notice at last that Gruber appears unresponsive. Finally, they, the medical team and everyone involved, agree this is good reason for sending him to the hospital. When it comes to privatized healthcare within jail systems, such as was the case with the jail that Gruber was at the time, staff are encouraged not to send inmates to the ER because should that patient, who is usually what they call a pre-trial detainee, live through their ordeal and make it to their court date, then the company is able to save on medical costs. This is a fact. It's only when the patient appears to be near death, and that usually amounts to being unresponsive in practice, that they say, okay, enough is enough, and they quickly call for that ambulance. Their MO at this point is when a patient shows signs of possibly being on the verge of death, to quickly sign the patient out of their custody so as to avoid any of the mandatory investigations that should come along as the result of an in-custody death. As crazy as it sounds, it's a very, very common practice. And it's something that I'm hoping to cover in much greater depth in a different upcoming video. But for now, as disgusting as it is, it's exactly the MO they appear to have used on Mr. Gruber. It's only when Gruber becomes unresponsive that they finally decide to call EMS. Subsequently, in our final scene, we watch as EMTs arrive and as they load Gruber onto a stretcher and usher him away. Hence, Gruber gets signed over into the custody of Vista Medical Center East in Waukegan, Illinois. Eugene Gruber passed away at Mount Sinai Hospital, where he was receiving treatment on March 3, 2012. The medical examiner officially ruled Gruber's death a homicide. His death was deemed to absolutely be the result of the injuries he sustained at the jail and the jail staff's delay in getting him treatment afterward. A wrongful death suit was filed on Eugene Gruber's behalf by his sister, who alleged excessive force against the guards at the Lake County Jail. But that wouldn't be the end of this story. Unlike so many stories with similar elements that we've looked at before, this one would come out surprisingly just a little bit different. According to ABC7, subsequent internal and independent investigations would, quote, reveal mismanagement in the jail, including falsified logbooks and poor supervision, end quote. With that said, however, at the end of the day, 3 officers were fired, a sergeant received a demotion, and 6 other employees of the jail also came to face disciplinary action. Last but not least, what surprised me the most is that the jail terminated the contract they had with the for-profit company they had been working with at the time. These are some commendable first steps, namely since in cases like these, most of the time, you literally see nothing getting done. But there are, of course, some shortcomings that need to be considered too. For one, you know how I just mentioned that the jail terminated their contract with the private medical provider they'd been working with at the time of Gruber's death? Well, the problem I see is that they didn't rid themselves of the privatized healthcare model altogether. They actually only just traded in one for-profit healthcare company in for another. And the problem isn't, from what I've seen broadly, the healthcare company itself so much as it is the way in which they're fashioned to work. Without getting into it too much right now, just think about it. Anytime you mix the idea of something that's for-profit together with healthcare, the results aren't going to be good. Because these are two opposing values working against each other, conflicting and butting heads with each other. You can't provide proper healthcare to an individual if your primary motive is monetary gain. As much as we'd like to see it work that way, it doesn't work that way. Next, I'm not certain if in the years to follow, the Lake County Jail remained committed and true to the changes that they pledged that they would make. We already know that they didn't do away completely with the faulty healthcare model, but I guess here's hoping that they were somehow able to stay true to changing the culture just a little bit. Finally, perhaps the most insulting shortcomings in all of this is the fact that local prosecutors found no basis upon which to press criminal charges against anybody. This in spite of the firings, in spite of the videos, for God's sake, and even in spite of the medical examiner's ruling Gruber's death a homicide. In tune with an excuse we often hear prosecutors use is the statement issued by Lake County Assistant State's Attorney Christian Bishop, who, according to the Daily Herald, stated that, quote, her office conducted a full investigation and found no evidence that anyone at the jail acted in a criminal manner. End quote. How? How? Can someone please explain to me how in the there is no evidence that there was nothing done here that was criminal? Once again, we've got an autopsy report which clearly lists the cause of death as a homicide. We also clearly know who committed said homicide. If anybody ever forgets at any point, no problem, because we have it on tape. And we also have a district attorney who is conscious, presumably, and perfectly capable of doing things such as filing criminal charges against people or entities who employ people who commit homicides. But what we're missing, of course, are the actual criminal charges. I have actually done my homework on this, and I am aware that within the legal application of the word, homicide doesn't necessarily have to refer to a criminal act. That is, there can be such a thing as both criminal and non-criminal homicide. But for some reason, I don't think that the non-criminal variety is what the medical examiner was going for when he or she wrote homicide in that box as to cause of Gruber's death. That's just my gut feeling. And even without the homicide, let's pretend the DA thinks it'd be too difficult to successfully win a case in which they were required to beat down a guy at a jail to his death at a hospital several months later. Well, at the very least, surely anybody that watches the videos we just watched, probably not to mention the rest of the video out there that we didn't get to watch, can see that there is at the very least some kind of criminal negligence or neglect involved here. I'm not a lawyer, but does anyone else get what I mean when I say that something just feels obviously criminal about the incident that we just saw? I think it's pretty despicable when lawyers and judges, etc., allow politics to get in the way of them doing their jobs ethically and in a way that is in the best interest of the people who rely on them for protection and for obtaining justice. But I guess everyone ultimately makes their own bed, right? And if you're so sociopathic that you can lie in that fucking bed right there, then there's really nothing much that I could do about it. And that sucks, but that's how it is. In summary, I guess all I'll say is that to me, the outcome ultimately feels a little bittersweet, whereas this is exactly how serious every wrongful death or every clear mistreatment or neglect case that happens in police custody or jail custody should be handled by the jail, or what it should result in. On the other hand, I can't help but feel disheartened that for whatever reason, nobody went to prison for causing this man's death. And on that note, I think that we can just about wrap up this story. As always, please like, comment if you feel so inclined, and I'll see you right back here for the next one.